Okay, Jess, take it
Oh,
away.
all right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for highlighting that important moment as well. So this is again, like I just said, not exactly a new course, really more of a revamping proposal for our senior level offerings of English. So our current offerings for senior level English would be AP Literature and Composition, Honors Humanities, and English 12. So those are the three different choices that our seniors currently have to fulfill their graduation requirement of the fourth year of English. And when I really started to sit down and we were talking, some of the administration and myself were talking about some of the needs that our students have, and we really obviously want to continue to offer students a rigorous curriculum that prepares them for life after high school. And we really want to look at, do we offer them a true choice in attempting to engage them and motivating them to become these lifelong learners that we hope that they are once they graduate Weston Public Schools. And in doing some research, looking at the idea that giving students real choice not only boosts their engagement and their motivation within a classroom, but also allows them to look at their strengths and enables us to meet some of their individual learning needs and allows them to be more aware of those needs as well. So, in thinking about all of that and doing some research in what our other fellow Durg A schools do, this is our proposal for English 12, the English 12 class. So, we would keep the three current offerings, we would just revamp the English 12 option so that it would look like students enrolling in the fall semester would take what is would be called English 12 fall semester. It would be very skills based to help them be college and career ready, you know, a universal experience for all students enrolled in that course, no matter the teacher, that we would really look at Common Core skill aligned units of things like working with right off the bat. I would think that the students would be working on things such as like personal narrative for their college essays, looking at literary analysis, argument, and then research and synthesis would almost be the units aligned with Common Core that the students would focus on. And then it would shift. And in the spring, they would have an opportunity to choose an elective that is going to build on their skills from the fall, but would be a little bit more thematic experiences, still asking them to have rigorous experiences with literature, but allowing to increase engagement by offering them a choice in what thematic experience they would be involved in. And so again, these are kind of the proposed units that I would say for the fall that we would, obviously ensure it's a very rigorous experience that would prepare our students for life after Weston Public Schools, but that would offer a very universal and kind of skills-based experience. And then moving into the spring, these are the elective options that I would love to propose. So the first, and I'll take us through each one of them, if you don't mind, would be called Criminal Minds, a psychological analysis of literature. The second option would be called Identity, Journey to Self-Discovery. And the third would be called The Future is Now, Archetypes in Fantasy, Myth, and Science Fiction. So what do those really mean? The Criminal Minds would be hopefully a really engaging course that would be offered to, again, the seniors in their spring, and they would look at the significance of crime in narrative form. We would walk the students through tracing the roots of the form, reading a variety of text to analyze how authors use crime as a plotting device in order to help study character, reveal social order, critique society. Students would get a range of different genres, nonfiction, mystery film, to really look at how criminality plays a role in defining a culture. And some potential units I'd love to propose would be looking at the history, reading some nonfiction, reading mystery, and as well as looking at media. Because today, podcasts, film, television, having students really do in-depth analysis of those genres to see how an author's purpose really comes to play. The second option would be Identity, Journey to Self-Discovery, would really explore the thematic ideas of identity and self-discovery asking students to do close reading analysis of literary text to analyze characters, conflicts, and like the thematic understanding that arises from these conflicts. Students would have universal questions such as who am I and who am I becoming as they look at the progression of identity through literature. And I think this class would be a great class, especially for seniors in the spring as they're about to leave us. And we can really kind of help do an opportunity of their own self-discovery as they're about to partake into, a range of different options after high school, and some different texts to allow them to get different points of view, allow them to learn about different cultures, different people, and then also about themselves. And then the third option finally would be called The Future is Now, Archetypes in Fantasy, Myth, and Science Fiction. And this would really allow students to explore different elements of science fiction. Students would get to read horror, mystery, fantasy, science fiction in order to look at how an author uses setting, character conflict to reveal cultural commentary. And they'll be asked to look at a lot of different options within science fiction. We can look at nonfiction, television, film, ask students to work critically and collaboratively. And again, some of the potential units or texts I've outlined here would help trace students through the history of science fiction, and then also fantasy, and then doing a unit on science fiction. So I know I kind of went through that quickly, but I really think that this opportunity would allow students to have some choice in their spring semester for senior year, and really allow students to, find out what they're interested in, learn in different ways, and work collaboratively and independently before they leave us in an opportunity just that they haven't gotten in English yet in their previous 3 years. So I really would love any questions that you may have on this. I thank you for your time. I thank you for any questions that you may have.
Sure, I absolutely love it. I love the idea of the different topics, and so interesting. And I, would love to take those classes myself. I love the idea of student choice too, because I'm sure that will definitely engage the students. Do you think that there's flexibility in the way that the students present the material in class with student choice?
Oh,
like
yes,
the different ways.
Yes, I think that some things some of our teachers have piloted a lot of is something called like literature circles, or like kind of like almost like book clubs where students could have some choice. We could have a number of different titles within, an elective, and students can choose from those and work. And especially at the senior year, really kind of helping to release a lot of that independence towards them, I think is very important, and perhaps would be a little bit easier almost to do if they already getting at that choice, that they're interested in this material. They, are excited to take a different class. They second semester seniors, and trying to say like, what are you want to bring to the class, and what things like that, and allowing them to add to that conversation, I think is really important.
Sounds good. I know they've got so many different talents and do a lot of writing building up to this, but their multimedia ability to present and things like that, it seems like a great opportunity and feeds right into trying to leverage their strengths, if it's like audiovisual or, creative writing, journalism.
I completely agree. I think that the class would allow for a lot of those opportunities, and allowing, again, like the student choice to lead it would be great.
Terrific. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you.
I have a question. Choice is always terrific, I think. We all know why. We all know, and the things that Bernie was talking about, I would hope, and I'm confident that that's occurring in all of the classes, not just these particular classes. The thing that I need some clarity on is the way that it will be scheduled. Years ago, we did quarter courses. We could not schedule them because when the kid wanted it a particular quarter, it was, sorry, you can't get your choice, but you can get this other choice. Now we have 4 sections budgeted next year for English 12. So that, I don't know if they're planning on offering them the same period. So you have 3 options. You have 4 sections. Talk to me a little bit about how you are going to guarantee. Are you going to expect people to stay in that same period? because if they have to move the period and if they're in a year-long class, how are they going to get what they want? That's
Right.
my
So,
concern.
yep. So we have so a number of things in answer to that question. And Jess, you can feel free to hop in, but I think this is maybe more in my wheelhouse. So number one, I would say Jess and I have talked on several occasions about, because we want to get at this choice piece, but the more we open it up, the harder it becomes to schedule, which is why we're bringing forward to you these three options, and they are very much based in what students have provided as feedback and what teachers have provided as feedback in terms of the types of themes that we're exploring. When we go through our scheduling process for any course, we ask students to make course requests. There is a piece of that process that allows us to ask them for alternate requests. So, for example, a student who is preparing to take English 12 may choose as their first choice Criminal Minds, and as a second choice, I would also accept this particular science fiction. I'm sorry, I don't know the specific titles off the top of my head, but they'll be able to make a choice as to first choice, second choice. And then as PowerSchool sort of spits out the master schedule, it will be able to account for, this is what I'm looking for first for that student, and this is what I'm looking for second for that student. The intention is not to schedule these courses during the same periods as the first semester English 12s. The intention is to try to use PowerSchool in the way that we always do to leverage the best possible scheduling of those courses. It may be that they are scheduled during those same periods. It may not. And a lot of this process is about what the kids say that they want. So it may come out that we have a huge number of requests for one of these particular electives, and there's not as much interest in another one. So we have to be flexible about what we ultimately implement based on what the student response is and what those numbers of requests are. I do think, whenever we add new courses, it does impact how we are scheduling things and what students are ultimately able to schedule. But I also think that we have limited it to a core number of choices and things that we know students are interested in. And I think that we will be able to schedule it in a way that makes sense for students.
I would just encourage you to think that if you can't, because it sounds great, but when you think of these kids that are in these courses that are year-long courses, you could get someone to say, you have to give up, AP Psych, which we really want you in, because you want Criminal Minds this semester, and you only have a limited number of sections and courses. It can be challenging. I hope that it can happen. Last time with the quarter courses, it did not happen. With the semester, perhaps it will, but I do think that we need to keep in mind the idea that if it becomes a logistical, we have to be careful about putting kids in positions then where I don't want to make this choice. I don't want to leave this other class. I don't want to leave whatever it is. And then it becomes, great, now I'm stuck with this. So I think this should move ahead, but I also think that you should consider if there is a certain amount of interest around one or two themes, that then perhaps does that become embedded in the regular 12 curriculum second semester in each quarter, so as to avoid potential conflicts. I mean, let's call it for what it is. We have over 60 singletons at the high school. That alone puts a lot of pressure on. So we can, I'm for trying it, but I think we also need to reflect internally on what are we going to do if it causes more strain in other classes, and to sustain those enrollments in those classes, because quite frankly, we only have a certain amount of FTEs, and we want to make sure that we can use them to the best as far as scheduling wise.
No, thank you very much. I agree.
And that's my 2 cents. I would just keep thinking along those lines, because you don't know what could happen. And the worst thing was, and when the death of the quarter courses came, it was, I didn't even want to take this, and now I'm shoved into it, which hopefully won't happen, because these are courses that they have expressed interest in. But I'm just trying to hedge our bets here a little bit in case the scheduling doesn't work.
No, and I appreciate that, of course. And I do think that, obviously the reflection would be part of the proposal, and saying, what issues did we run into, and what issues could we work around, or what do we need to do? I will say that the students were asked to take a survey. So current juniors and current seniors were asked to take a survey about their interests, and they overwhelmingly, I don't think there was one negative about the idea of like a student choice. And I even kind of came back to a couple and said, like, well, what if you got a choice that you didn't want? They were like, well, we have to take English. So they very much were
I'm sorry, I should know this answer. Were the students that were surveyed, was it the entire grade or just the ones that are targeted for the standard English?
It was a
Just
targeted
the standard English, right? Okay.
So I did the 11th and 12th graders, the ones who are currently in it, and then the 11th graders who would be on track.
Okay, any additional questions?
Just to piggyback off Lisa, I'm sorry if I don't understand. What's preventing this from being a full year course where just the first half of the year, all the students are doing the same thing, but then, so the criminal minds teacher would teach the first half of the year the same content as the teacher doing like personal journey, and then they just flip over second semester?
So, master scheduling is super complex at the high school. And as Lisa said, because of the number of singleton courses that we offer, because of the number of courses that we offer that are mixed grade level. And so if we plan something as a year-long course, it kind of locks us into that particular period all year long. And we don't have the flexibility to move it around based on where students need things to be. What Power School does when we put requests into, and when we put our sort of list of courses that we're running into the program, is it uses an algorithm to determine what is the best master schedule that we can get in order to schedule as many requests as have been made. So we make efforts to run the program as many times as we can and adjust priorities and adjust how something is scheduled, whether it's year-long or semester, in order to ensure that as many students get as many requests as they have made as they can in their actual schedule. So if we were to say right now that we're going to run this as a year-long course and it's English 12 and then it's Criminal Minds, the students who actually take that course, some of the other courses that they're taking are year-long courses. Some of the other courses they're taking are quarter courses. Some of them are semester courses. And so they will have movement within their schedule for other courses. And if we kind of hold an entire block for that, it may not be the best scheduling situation for the outcome that we're hoping for. I know that it gets very complex in the way Power School works. But basically what we do is we try to create as much flexibility as we can so that Power School can move things around sort of where they need to be based on the student requests.
Is English 12 right now currently a half-year course?
No, it is currently a full year course.
Okay,
Students
so if you
must take 4 years of English.
right, I didn't know if you meant it was a half-year course and that they might have different teachers for the flexibility to take different sections. So right now it's a full year course. So if you kept everything status quo, wouldn't it be the same thing in Power School, but then just change what they do in the content?
Not necessarily, because it doesn't get at what the student would like to do, right? So if Power School tells me that I'm scheduled for English 12 period 1, then I'm locked into whatever that second half of period 1 is. So it's the choice piece that is adding this sort of complication on the scheduling end. But I think it's something that we want to try to work out for the sake of the choice and the level of engagement. And as Jess said, preparing them for the choices that they'll have to make when they leave us.
Thank you.
The other thing I just want to make sure that people understand is we can't touch the first semester. Correct, ladies? It has to be English 12 to get them where they need to go as far as with their essays, for college, all of those other things. We can't touch that first semester. The other thing, remember, second semester, the last 5 weeks, they're on internship. They're not even here. So that also kind of plays to the choice and that kind of stuff, releasing ownership of certain things, providing them more ownership of certain things. So that will be factored in the plan for that second semester.
Julie, I think I understand the scheduling complications. Does Power School have the ability for you to rank interest in courses? So I think what I'm hearing you say is that, like, yeah, everything Jessica presented to me sounds super interesting, but I don't know the entire coursework in the high school. So just to kind of dot the i's and cross the t's, if Power School basically makes what Jessica is saying as a possibility not doable because of scheduling conflicts, but as Power School doesn't take into consideration enrollment or interest, like ranking classes, so that if something gets on the chopping block or really causes you grief, you can determine, well, it's a relatively low interest elective.
Yes, in two different ways. So in terms of how we're hoping to approach the scheduling of what Jess is proposing, the student can indicate their interest. So that's exactly what we'll do. If you're enrolling in English 12, you will also choose a second semester English elective, and we will ask students to indicate their preference, first choice, and then alternate. That was what I was mentioning with the alternate. There is at the school level also just as we're inputting the master schedule and what courses we will run, there is a ranking that's generated in terms of the priorities we indicate. And that is often with the best example is a core course that is required of all students. So English 12, the first semester that Jess is talking about, will have a high priority because it's a core course that every student needs to schedule. As we get down the list and we start to look at elective things that are not necessarily required for graduation, or that may be sort of high-level choices, they might be assigned a lesser priority in terms of when and how they're scheduled for particular students, because simply we have to be able to make sure that students are scheduling those core courses first. So there is a certain amount of, obviously Power School is a computer program, but there's also a certain amount of human user component here. So as administrators at the high school are preparing for scheduling, there are some things that we can do to play around with what that priority number looks like in order to get to a schedule where more students have requests that are met. So sometimes we have to do that. We've done it in the past. Power School will spit something out. It will tell us that 70% of student requests were met by this schedule, and we don't feel like we like that because it looks like courses in one particular department kind of got hammered in terms of whether students could schedule them. And so we're going to try and shift the priority in that department to see if we can get a little bit of a better situation in that department. So there's a lot that Power School does in terms of the sort of mathematical computer piece, but then there's also the human piece that allows us to make adjustments because we are a small school and maybe to reprioritize something like this in this case, because it's the first time we're doing it and it's something we really would like to try. So, all this to say, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in Power School when we try to do this, but we're going to look at where we are. And as Lisa said, we'll have to be ready to course correct if need be.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move on now, if it's okay. We have Dan Doak joining us again. He has reflected more, worked with his team considerably in looking at some of the goals they have for the middle school. And I think you'll be very pleased to hear some refinements to his proposal today. June, if you can give Dan access to present. And Jess, you're welcome to stay or not. It's up to you for this next presentation. So
I'm actually going to run to class, but I thank you all so very much. And thank you again, though, for all that you do for the students and teachers here. Have a great day.
All right. So Dan, can you kind of run us through what's changed since you last were here?
Sure. So first of all, thanks again for this opportunity. I think this has been a very helpful process. This is my third time 3 months in a row back discussing this. And I think each time I come back and refine my thinking as well. I'm assuming you can see my screen and you can hear me because all I see is my own screen presentation right now.
Right.
So I'm going to run through first some of the enhancements of the proposed changes to the middle school schedule. This proposal would bring us back to our peer teaming model, where I've talked about what that means for a middle school. It's what all of our neighboring districts do. When they have a middle school, they have a teaming model where the English, math, science, and social studies teachers all share the same kids. One of the things that was mentioned in an earlier meeting was, would we look at the schedule? As we're looking at the model, is it a good time to look at our schedule as well? And we found that to make this model really work optimally, we are able to bring back longer periods for all of our classes. So this would be every class at the middle school, all 3 grades would be 50 minutes long in all subjects. And that actually really brings us to longer academic periods than any of our DERG comparable schools around us. This academic workshop time would replace the quiet study that's currently in our schedule and has been for maybe 5 or 6 years with some instructional time. And the focus of that workshop would be on developing critical skills necessary for academic success. And these are the very same skills that feed into the portrait of a graduate. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. The SRBI interventions, that's our math, our reading interventions, our strategies class, our OST, project challenge enrichment for talented and gifted, all of that would be scheduled during the academic workshop time. And one of the, as we played with the schedule and tried to get this to work for all 3 grade levels, we found that this works and allows us to have world language every day in 6th grade. Currently, we're one of the few schools in 6th grade where world language is in every other day class. So that puts 6th grade world language on par with 7th and 8th grade world language as well. So those are the highlights of, I think, what are the enhancements, how we're improving the middle school academic experience. So what is academic workshop? So all 4 academic teachers, as I mentioned, on a team would teach workshop at the same time. They'd have one workshop on A days and one workshop on B days. Students would have one of those 2 days. So it would be an every other day class time for the students, but an everyday teaching time for the teachers. Teachers and students would explore content-related themes in addition to conferencing and one-on-one small group work with students. So you'll see in English, I would put reading and writing conferences throughout, but I do know that some of the teachers also have some ideas of vocabulary building and some other activities and units that they would like to work on with the students. Math, again, it's a lot of math problem solving. Some teachers want to introduce some consumer math, some personal finance, and some probability and statistics in addition to the other extensions of their math. Science, some of the ideas that our teachers have come up with would be the concept of being a citizen scientist, observing the world, getting out and actually doing some hands-on experiences right here on campus. Creating a sustainable world along with some community service. We talked a lot about sustainability and how we can make an impact here locally. And in 8th grade, applying principles of environmental science. So there's a real thread to that idea of sustainability. Some things that teachers don't currently have time for in their curriculum, especially with the 41, 42-minute classes, that with this extra time, in addition to longer periods, they can get at. In social studies, here's where we really get into some of those skills that I was talking about, exploring local issues and focusing on some public speaking skills, exploring how local issues impact the world and maybe getting into some of those debate skills. And then in 8th grade, analyzing contemporary issues and working on more public presentation. So those are some of the ideas. Again, the workshop for students would be every other day. They would have each of these for 1 quarter. So that's how they would cycle through. But the benefit of it also is that these are smaller groups of students. And with the longer periods, there is some flexibility in there for after maybe a 30-minute lesson for students then to go and meet with one of their core academic teachers for makeup work or extra help as well.
When you say 1/4, sorry, Dan. Good
Yeah.
morning, everyone. I'm sorry I was late. When you say 1/4, go back to the previous slide. It means that in Q1 of the year, you're only doing ELA workshops.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you for that question. It means, well, it depends how you meant that question. If it means a student might have English first quarter, math second quarter, science third quarter, and social studies fourth quarter, or in any order. They could have social studies. The teachers, when you see the teacher schedule, the math teacher is going to teach math workshop all year, twice a day. Students,
Right. But the students are cycling. But what I mean is the students will, in 1/4, they will not have more than one discipline workshop.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
gotcha.
correct, yes. And I'm going to show a sample student schedule that might clarify as well.
Thank you.
So here's the sample student schedule. So here you see the student does have math, social studies, PE, health, art, tech, and engineering, lunch, English, band on A days, and academic workshop on a B day, and it will be one of those 4 each quarter. And then science and Spanish.
And I know we are not going to go back over this again, but I know that we discussed in one of your previous 2 visits the weighing the benefits of getting rid of the quiet study in lieu of this.
Yes.
And for those who may not remember, I think the discussion is that quiet study might not have been used as richly and deeply as could have been used by the kids, and that this is just a much better option. I just wanted to put that out there on the record.
Yes.
Okay.
If I can interject, a couple of the things that we really wanted to get at is, first of all, the frenetic pace of 42-minute classes at the middle school. Rushing around and having 42-minute classes. We did this at the high school a while ago. You know, we went from 46 to 50 or 48 to, what is it, Julie, 56? Something like that. That extra time really does help. It's less transition. The other thing is we heard loud and clear is, when do kids get extra help? They can't before school. You know, the kid has to take the bus. There's no time. So with this option, they're focusing on those skills for about 35 minutes in that thing. But then they have the flexibility to go to those other teachers and get like 15 minutes of extra help in particular areas that they need help in. You know, I mean, I envision them, okay, I'm going to math, I'm going to go to science, I got to go to English. It really strengthens and it builds that in. So then it's not like, how are these kids ever supposed to get extra help? You know, they're programmed immediately after school. You know, 5 minutes before school or 10 isn't going to cut it. So I have to applaud Dan for really, and the team for coming back and looking at it, and moving in this direction.
And then I thought you might also want to see what a sample teacher schedule would look like. This is a math teacher schedule where you see their teaching time is in blue. So they'll have 4 math classes every day and a math workshop where they see, you know, their own students again, but for a quarter every other day. So that this teacher has 3A math workshop and 5B math workshop. One of the other benefits of this schedule, when we started to think about it, was that we can also build in curriculum partner time by discipline. So the math teacher on one 6th grade team can be scheduled to have their curricular partner time at the same time as the other math teacher on the other 6th grade math team. And that would be true for all 4 of the core academic areas, which I think is a real bonus on top of, they still have their meeting time, they still have their prep time, but we can actually schedule it in such a way that we're taking into consideration the curriculum partner time as well. So that really was, it seems simple and clear to me now. This was a process that really took a lot of thinking and a lot of different steps in terms of getting to where we are. But I'm really psyched about the possibilities of doing this. And even when we started looking at how we are developing our staffing budget, because that's happening in a parallel process to all of this, we're actually able to save FTE through this process because we're restructuring how we deliver some of our other courses. So even with the addition of everyday world language, and looking at some of the savings that we have just from the enrollment issues, with some adjustments of how we deliver some of our curriculum, this is going to be under our current FTE.
Roughly by how much, Dan?
I got it down right now as a
about-
1.0.
Is it a 1.0?
1.0, right? Yeah.
Which is about, depending on how you chop it up, $100,000. So I do think that the academic return on investment of this program is really good, and it takes care of other things. I mean, to be frank, that quiet study, you had 80% of the students in quiet study, 20% of them were doing their interventions and their different things. It was the tail that was wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I do also think, and we talked about this, that we also have to look at the homework and what homework is being given, especially in 6th grade as compared to 7th and 8th,
Right.
with longer blocks, with some built-in time where they can get work checked. We want to be conscious of not having tons and tons of homework.
Right.
It's a balance. So,
and Lisa, thank you for saying that. But I do think it's important to point out that equity and access piece that the extended learning block or quiet study block allowed for us to have is still built into this, because students don't have to give up one of their electives to access their SRBI, their project challenge. They're still going to get access to art, to tech and engineering. And that was one of the problems we were trying to solve 6 years ago. So we're able to still address that equity and access issue for our students.
Great. The other thing is to piggyback on what Julian just said, the idea of inspiring curiosity. And by, it's kind of a directed choice, I guess I would say, when the teachers look at these quarters. But to be able to really focus on like sustainability projects, different things like that in that academic block, that's where I think that you always talk about middle school about exploring other things like that. And it really sets them up well as they go through it for when they go to the high school. I love environmental science because I had this experience. Saying that we just embed it in the regular science. Yeah, we do it, but this is a different way to look at it. I love this stuff in social studies, and I'm going to join the Model UN program. And
Right.
I want to take, AP Human Geography. I'm hoping it sparks their interest. Same thing with, we hear forever, personal finance should be at the high school. Well, it can't be at the high school. The high school is so involved in so many other math levels. But if we could have some kind of an introduction at the middle school about how to be responsible with your money, I think that public presentation we used to offer at the high school, all these things I think I really believe set them up to have these kinds of teasers and developments of the skills so that they will be poised much better for when they do transition. But it's kind of done in a developmental way. And I think that it builds on both the teachers and the students' excitement around key areas that they would like to explore more.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Dan.
You're
The new
welcome.
schedule looks exciting. Looks really good. In thinking about the budget and the new schedule, is there any thoughts or need for professional development for the teachers on how to use the 50 minutes more effectively? Or now that there's these new academic workshops, how to maximize that? Do you think that's something that we need to look at or we're comfortable with?
Ken has put some money into the budget, right, Ken? Can you speak to that?
Yes. So there is funding in the budget for work over the summer for teachers to craft the academic workshops, work together to do that. The additional time, if we were going to 75, 90-minute blocks that long, I would say there'd be more significant professional development that would need to be done. But I think it's more conversations Dan's going to have with his faculty and the SILs with their departments to maximize that instructional time. But if you were to make a much larger shift, you'd need much more in-depth professional development, much more project-based type learning. But I think, Dan, is that a fair statement?
Yeah. And remember, we had 49-minute classes just 7 years ago. And the
real shifts in curriculum now, we'll need curriculum work in 6th grade ELA, because remember, we have a double block currently, 2 42-minute periods in 6th grade. So we're shifting to an integrated approach in 6th grade like we have in 7th and 8th. And, some board members will recall that I've been a strong proponent of the double block in 6th grade, where now Dan's proposal has 50-minute class periods for all subjects. I think that then becomes a real win-win situation for all subjects. So it's not that we are losing the double block, we're gaining more time for all subjects, plus the everyday world language in 6th grade. And I think those are, at this time, worth the trade-off. Taff, you'll recall probably.
And that's the other area I think that
conversations. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I think that's the other area that may need additional, just some curriculum work in 6th grade world language, French and Spanish, because they're going from a every other day model to an everyday model. So that would look different.
Correct. Mercedes is going to need to work with the team on that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Any more questions? All right. Okay, thank you, Dan. And I know that's been a journey that has started over the summer, and it's been a lot of hard work, and even talking with colleagues from other districts, collecting a lot of that information. It's been very comprehensive. So thank you. So now we shift.
Well done, Dan. Well done. We keep saying to stretch ourselves. And we said, make it cost neutral or less. Sorry, Ken.
Yeah.
No, that's
Thanks, Dan.
exactly what we're trying to do. Continuous
Lisa,
improvement.
maybe you should start giving out the stretch award.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, I
True,
like
that's-
it.
I like it too. The
I
stretch
like
award.
it. Well, you did a great job, Dan, but that's not saying you're getting the stretch award. We're going to have a cumulative effort, and we'll evaluate at the end
I
of
don't
the year.
know.
Hey, David, maybe you can help me with a rubric for it.
Maybe
Well,
it
here's
should
what we
be
do.
called
So-
the inaugural Dan Doak Stretch Award.
Yes. And then here's how we extend it. So Lisa gives out, so the curriculum committee votes on who gets the stretch award. No, Lisa gives the stretch award, and then whoever has the stretch award for the month gets to excuse themselves from any one meeting.
Oh, the wall would love that. But you know what? I got to say, I'm not sure if Dan should get it or the high school, because I love the high school, with Portrait of a Graduate, because this kind of stretches into both of it. So maybe you'll have to have it together.
All right. I like it.
What's interesting, and it's serious for a second, and I know Dan will agree, the stretch things are the things that energize us. They're the things that make us want to come back and do the work. We get so excited about these things. So
Great.
Great. All right, the third item on our agenda brings Tracy into the conversation. We had previewed the social emotional learning conversation we wanted to have today, and we know that this is certainly a priority. It's embedded in our goals for the year. The healthy learning environment is right up there with our curriculum and instruction goal. So we know that for students, in order for them to be successful academically, they have to feel comfortable, safe in their environment, and in a good place in order to learn. So we want to be responsive to the committee and updating you regularly on where we are as a system. And I know Tracy is here. She has a K-12 perspective. We have, if Dan and Julie, if you could stick around for this part of the meeting, I appreciate it. Our K-5 principals, I did excuse them for today since most of the items are secondary. They probably would make their own case for the stretch award themselves, but since we're all secondary here, we'll but we'll bring them in the mix next time. But Tracy, do you want to take us away?
Yes, thanks, Ken. It might be helpful to step through the goal document as I talk about this. I don't know if I have.
June, can you give sharing rights, please?
She already automatically has them.
Oh, perfect. You can see that, yes. Sorry, it's not the right.
Yeah, if you can maximize, thanks.
Can you see the whole screen now? Okay, I'll assume yes. So I'm going to talk about 3 different goal areas within today's presentation, and I really just want to update you about highlights in each area. I'm not going to go through every single action step. The first goal is around healthy learning environment, and that is all around promoting and maintaining an inclusive environment for our students. And you'll note here, one of the first action steps is conducting a climate survey in grades 6 through 12, which happened recently. And so the next step in our process will be to look closely at that data and analyze that data and potentially make new goals and action steps related to the outcomes that we hear from students within that process. I want to spend a little bit more time on the first goal related to pupil personnel services, which is all around social emotional learning. And I want to be transparent that, from my perspective, and I think from a district perspective, we are still very much in the pandemic, and we're experiencing all sorts of outcomes as a result of that. And it's presenting us with a unique set of challenges, I think is fair to say. We are definitely seeing an increase in social emotional need. I would say that increase is most pronounced at the middle school and high school level, and especially at the high school level. I'm not minimizing the work that's happening with our mental health professionals at the elementary level, but that's where we're seeing the greatest level of need at this point. It is resulting in an increase in referrals, either to special education or to the 504 process. And I think most of you have been in enough meetings to know that most of my discussion and work really centers around specific individual needs of students. And we are continuing to work with families and problem solve on a case-by-case basis as we're navigating a variety of situations. I can speak to some of the things that are happening from a district-wide standpoint and some of the action steps that are listed here. And one is around DBT, which is an initiative that started, I want to say 3 years ago. We are continuing to provide new training to new staff. And we also have an ongoing consultation. DBT is used at the middle school and high school level. It's not really utilized at the elementary level. We're much more focused on ruler at those grade levels for a variety of reasons. We have ongoing consultation with a DBT provider who is working with our mental health teams at both the middle school and high school. We are certainly continuing to implement ruler and DBT. The middle school is really the only building that's kind of a blend between those two programs because we're transitioning from ruler, which we feel is more appropriate at the elementary level, to a program that we think is better suited for our older students. I think our SRBI work and planning is probably a whole nother conversation, but I'll just point out that social emotional behavioral support will be part of that as we roll out a plan for moving forward. We are also fortunate this year to have a district consultant who is working with us to support our mental health needs at all levels. So that provider is working with mental health teams at the elementary level. That is one distinct group. And then there is specific support that's happening with the middle school team, and then distinct support from that happening with the high school team. This is an area of I would say, intensive focus this school year. I anticipate it will continue to be a focus in the years to come. And, you know, I do need to applaud our mental health staff. I think they have done an extraordinary job working with our students and our families around a variety of different student needs. They've thought creatively, they've worked in collaborative ways, and really supportive ways. I think our families see them as a consistent resource, which I appreciate very much. Another area.
Sorry, Tracy, can I interrupt for 1 second and ask a question around how this is laid out? Or do you want me to save my question for the end?
I'm fine with you asking a question right now. I can't see anyone with the way that my screen is
Okay.
set, so
Yeah. This is Taffy. Evidence indicators of success. I'm just curious. When I look at your very first row here that you're discussing now, it seems that the evidence indicators are really infrastructural, you know. Is there a reason you've decided to frame it that way as opposed to, you know, for example, the third bullet in that column, implementation of ruler K-5. To me, that doesn't feel like an indicator of success. I mean, it's a success that it's been implemented. And perhaps I'm going to phrase this in the form of a question. Where are the outcomes? So evidence of success to me is that kids are feeling better, right? So where will that go? Because I know you're tracking that as well.
Yeah, I will say that's a little bit of a tricky measurement right now, because we are seeing a significant increase in a variety of challenges students are facing. And it's sometimes hard to give you that data because A, it's subjective, and in a lot of cases, and B, we're starting to drill down into very specific kinds of student information. If you're looking for more broadly, like I'll give you one example. WIS is and has been providing, I'll call them coping strategies to students within the context of their general education classrooms. We can provide you with information about how that's working and how students are responding to those techniques, but it's hard to give you the more intricate and individualized data that I think is probably the most telling in this.
Right. It would require some longitudinal study, right, over 2 years to see how kids are changing and improving or not.
And quite frankly, I worry a little bit about data in a moment of crisis. And obviously this is more than a moment, but I think that kind of is the situation that we're in as a result of the pandemic and the stressors related to that. So I think when we're looking at data points from last year and also this year, you know, for different reasons, those are going to be outliers when you look at the trajectory of students over time.
I totally understand that, and I'm not trying to be difficult. It's more that the column heading is evidence indicators of success, and to me, it's, you know, it doesn't get to are we providing? Well, I don't know how to help me out here, guys. We're providing
I'm going to say, I hear what you're saying, and probably the one that's the hardest is when I look at the implementation of ruler, and I helped write this. Like, so this is like, it's hard to get at specifics because first of all, like, how can I say this? We can't necessarily say, you know, that this particular thing, like, it's not necessarily a cause and effect with, like, if somebody is struggling, you know, like, oh, we have this many referrals. You can't say, oh, the referrals went down because of this one particular thing. I think what we're trying to do here is to show that at scale, are we doing this? So for example, if you look at implementation of ruler K-5, what I can say to you is that every student at the intermediate school, whatever it is, 500 and something, made a Calm Pocket with Vicki DeLuca the first month of school. I saw her doing it. There are these little pockets where they use that as a specific targeted coping mechanism, if you
Mhm,
will. I
Yeah.
think that there are more examples that we probably can produce. Like we see DBT lessons for health, blah, blah, blah. When I was at the elementary school, Sharon Rodko, it was the first time I saw a ruler, was talking about like their specific lesson with this word detectives, where they went through this whole thing about how to be kind. And the little girl said, if someone's in the red, we need to let them have their turn first and help them so they're not frustrated. I could
Yeah.
not believe a 6-year-old articulated this, but it was that word detectives, for example, that lesson where she goes over that. I mean, they do it all the time in morning meeting, but it's reinforced in every first grade class. They all have that word detective lesson. So
Yeah.
maybe those are the kinds of more examples that we need specifically, because some of these things are at scale when it's with the overall population, because we get into, oh, there's 20 referrals here, or then it gets a little bit trickier.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we could like call Mark Brackett, designer of ruler, and go, okay, if we do A, B, and C, are we guaranteed to see these results, right? And he's not gonna. He too has to collect that data in a very rigorous and long term
Yeah.
way. So we understand that. It's and I'm gonna defer here because I think what we're saying here is the assumption is if we implement ruler fully and comprehensively, and if we implement our DBT lessons fully and thoroughly, that we can expect good outcomes. If we do it, it's going to work. If we don't do it, we're going to leave our kids in the lurch. So the assumptions built into that column that if we implement these things, it's going to result in positive outcomes, and I'm fine with that. I don't need to obviously we're going to do well-being survey in a year from now, and if nothing where do we sort of say to ourselves, wow, this isn't actually yielding the results that we want? And you don't need to answer that now. It's more a question out there for consideration.
Understood. Yeah, I think those are all fair points, and we can certainly be thinking about how to give you some more meaningful information to support some of those areas.
But don't think of us as like the donor that just gave you $1 million, and now you have to prove that your $1 million, resulted in reduction of poverty. I don't need that. It's not for us. It's more that we want to know that you have the mechanisms for doing it so that you can course correct as needed. Right? It's definitely not for the board. I don't want to speak for the other board members, but I think this is just. I want you to carry on because this is really rich stuff, and I didn't mean to undermine it. I want to do the opposite. I want to just say, reassure me that these things are absolutely amazing interventions that are going to make a difference, and I'm good with that.
Okay, that's fair enough. I can move to alternative pathways at this point, and I am particularly excited to share this update, and I will talk about specific indicators related to this program. I think most or all of you know that we made a decision last year to create our own in-house program, and it took a significant amount of creativity on the part of the high school team, and they owned every aspect of it. And I think a huge part of the success and why I'm about to share really positive updates about this program is largely due to the mental health professionals who are connected to that program. We have one social worker dedicated to the Alternative Pathways program at the high school. She is new to the district this year, and she has come in and made an immediate impact for our students, our families, and our staff. And then the other critically important component of this program is the academic portion of it. And credit to our SILs who stepped up to the plate. And I'm not saying they're always going to be attached to the academic portion of this program, but they have literally paved the way in terms of imagining what this can and should look like. And we have truly hit the ground running. So this program just to give a very brief overview, is designed for students who are working through mental health challenges and benefit from smaller structures for their academic and social emotional learning environments. It's essentially kind of like a school within a school. And I am very pleased to report that the students who are accessing services within this program have improved their attendance. All of the students in this program earned all of the credits that they were participating in Q1. I obviously don't have data for other quarters yet. That is a very strong start and different than the experience that we were having previously. They are engaging in counseling support, and their buy-in in that process is really important. And sometimes that takes a lot of work. And I think we're in a good spot in terms of getting students to engage in that. You know, I've reached out to our social worker for this program, and we were just talking about an overall update. And she shared with me that some of the students have expressed to her that they feel like they can't fail in this program because of the structures and supports that are kind of wrapped around them, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, really very exciting.
Yeah. And I think it's good news about this program in this moment in time. And to the point about we get really excited about new ideas, I think it has also gotten us thinking about what is our potential even beyond this program. We were pretty transparent with the board that, you know, this can only support so many students. And we wanted to really adhere to that, especially in year one, because we wanted to make sure that we were working with a program size that was manageable. I think it's getting us to think about what elements of this can we maybe incorporate in other ways, in other areas at the high school. And then long term, I am not suggesting for next school year, but long term, what implications can a program like this have in other areas of the district, like the middle school, for example? So
if I can interrupt, I want to just emphasize one thing. And I know that Julie and the team, the academic team at the high school, are really proud of it. Tracy says that they're passing. They are not only passing, they are thriving. I looked at the students here and every grade they got. And we're talking about kids with A minus, A minus, A minus, C, A. That's one student. You know, B minus, A plus, A in math. A plus, B plus, C plus, A. These are the individual kids in courses like environmental science, in American literature, in American studies, requirement for graduation, algebra 2. I mean, these are rigorous classes. And I can't say enough about the SILs helping them do this to earn the credits. That other program, they never earned anything, to be perfectly blunt. Julie, I don't know if you want to expand on that, because there will be a request in the budget to increase the academics. But again, no worries without an overall increase of FTE. Julie?
Sure. I'll just underscore what Tracy said, that sentiment from the students that we can't fail. We have heard that from multiple students in this program. The teachers here, the providers here have my back. I can't fail. I feel so accomplished. I'm proud of myself, right? These are things that these kinds of students don't say, don't share with school staff. And it's so validating to hear that. I mean, while we're sitting here in the curriculum committee, I would show you, but for confidentiality reasons, I can't. I received a photograph of a student in Pathways working on a hands-on math activity, a student that has made incredible strides just from last spring. And everyone owns that, so much so. All of the staff members who are a part of this, all of us, we're just so excited to see them really, and as Lisa said, thriving in this program. I can't say enough good things. Obviously, we're still working on it. We're still inventing what it looks like and what it can be, and how do we make it better, and how do we accommodate more students, and How do we create tiers of this kind of support? And those are conversations that are ongoing. And I will also underscore Dr. Kaplan's consultancy as part of this program has been a tremendous resource for us. I sat in on the meeting that he had with all of the providers in this program just last week, and they really get into case studies and talking about specific strategies and what do we do for this particular student. And he will say, how can I help? What conversations can I have? So it really truly feels like a wraparound. We have this small community of staff members and with Dr. Kaplan's help who are truly surrounding each one of these students with an incredible amount of support, and we're seeing the positive outcomes in so many ways.
Amazing.
Okay, Tracy, we're done with
Amazing.
taking over.
No,
It's just so, I am so proud of these kids. I could cry.
That's awesome.
Great. So
I have a question. I don't want to interrupt. Is it okay?
No, I
Sure.
think we're done.
Oh, okay. I know we've been working in Weston for a long time on building a really strong and robust social emotional learning program. I think where my concern is just yesterday, the Surgeon General came out and said that mental health is a crisis among adolescents. And this is on top of the American Pediatric Association, the Pediatric Psychiatric Association coming out in the fall saying it. Are we as a district doing anything, I don't know, new, specific in response to that particular announcement? And is there more need? Do we need to do more? Do we need more resources to address the fact that it's now at crisis level beyond just, a regular programming level?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Tracy, and then I'll follow.
I was going to say, I don't disagree with you. I think I used the term crisis earlier in my presentation. I think that's absolutely where we are. Again, particularly at the upper grade levels, I think we are taking steps as a district. We've talked about the development of an in-house program, and I understand that there was a program in place previously, but this is an entirely different arrangement that is existing in response to the concerns and challenges that we were seeing last year. We also have a consultant working with our mental health teams on a monthly basis to be talking through specific challenges and concerns. How do we problem solve? How do we think about this, in new ways? I think I was also transparent at the start. We are seeing a significant increase in referrals. And, your question about do we have enough support? I don't think if we continue on this path, I am hoping that we are going to see a leveling out of some of this need. But right now,
Just count it real quick.
our capacity, even, we talked about alternative pathways, and that's working wonderfully well for a core group of students. Are there other students that could benefit from a program with a similar structure? Yes. And do we have the capacity to do that and the structure to do that in this moment? No, which is why we're talking about making some changes in the budget. I am looking closely at mental health support district wide, and if there is a way to be structuring that differently in order to relieve some of this pressure. But I mean, we are very aware of that and seeing it here. And I think we are also a high performing and competitive place. And I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing more of a need at the high school level, because we have students who are working through real and significant mental health challenges while they are also applying to competitive colleges and writing essays and volunteering and playing sports and doing community service. I think it's a long conversation that we should continue to have. I am closely monitoring it. Building administrators are closely monitoring it, and it's on our radar.
And if I can just add something. So yes, there are real acute needs. And in a lot of ways, this year is harder on our administrative team than last year. And when we talk about the stress of the students, and I think that we're really making grounds here, I also have to be cognizant of how much can we bite off at any one time, and how can we embed and keep looking forward, but to also, to be perfectly frank, take care of our administrative staff who are working 15 hours a day to try to keep all of this going and triaging situations such as, students that are struggling, families that are stressed. It's requiring a tremendous amount of effort. And I think that we're, if we continue along that and celebrate like we are with Pathways along the way, it's just, this isn't going to be resolved by, it would be great, hire 5 more people. We can't do that. We have a certain amount of funding right now. We're trying to figure things out the very best we can and go along. And I think that that it will continue. I mean, this kind of goal can never go away. But I also have to be cognizant of how much can we realistically accomplish from now until the end of the school year. We will keep at it. But any major overhaul, I don't know if I'm overstepping in your area, Tracy. It's very, very hard. I mean, we have issues just even with staffing with regular teachers. You only have to drive on I-95 and see billboards that say Norwalk needs sped teachers. I mean, it's like it's just very complex, and we just have to keep plugging along. I don't know if the building people want to add anything.
Lisa, just in response to that, I'm thinking, the administrators, all of the teachers, is being a new board member, is there anything on the Board of Ed we can do to support that effort, or anything you want us thinking about or considering in terms of policy, or, as we go into budget season, just so that we're...
I think it's obviously to support the budget and to push and ask questions and engage in the dialogue around things. I am so conscious of the FTEs and the funding and how to maximize it. I think that's really important. And the other thing I think is that if we can really just focus on our plan that we have crafted and keep trying to move forward with that plan. Sometimes other ideas come up, and it's like, frankly, it's very hard to go down another little path about something when we're so focused on some of the work that we're trying to do now, both academically and social emotionally. So just to kind of, I think, keep that in mind, because it's real challenging. It's been really challenging. I mean, I talked to the building administrators the other day, and this is hard work.
Thank you for everything you guys do. I mean, it's everything.
And we appreciate it. We feel
everything.
it from all of you. I just didn't want since it is being recorded, for people to know. It's hard. I don't know, guys. Don't you think I feel like this year is harder? Maybe it's because of my new role than it was last year during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, oh, sorry, Dan. I've been meeting, with staff in different buildings, and I've been saying to people that from my perspective, and I was new to district last year, so there was like a transition happening for me. This school year is infinitely more challenging than last school year. And when I'm saying that to staff, sometimes the response I get is, thank goodness you're saying that to me. I feel better hearing that I'm not the only one in this spot, because I think we all came back with some degree of expectation that this is going to feel a little bit lighter.
Right.
And we're getting the exact opposite. And so I think just acknowledging that has been helpful. At least that's what I've seen.
Tracy, I was just going to give a little more detail without going into too much detail. And that is, last year, we didn't have discipline problems at the middle school. We didn't have any situations, honestly. So this year, not only are we back to sort of normal discipline, but as I've talked with my principal colleagues at other middle schools, these are students that have had a year and a half without those little micro corrections from parents and from teachers and from administrators. They're being kids. They want to be with each other. And we're also asking them to still try to maintain social distancing and wearing masks. And now we also have other things happening again in the greater culture that is a stress on teachers. When you have school shootings anywhere in this country, our teachers feel it at a deep personal level, and
Yeah.
it puts everybody on edge. And you have COVID cases rising again and new variants. So there's all of this stress while we're trying to make sure that we help our students not only social emotionally, but make some major academic gains.
Right.
There's
Learn.
pressure, there's
Right.
pressure everywhere, and everybody's feeling it. So thank you for saying that.
Thank you,
I just
everyone.
want to add on the mental health front, it's not only about what we're doing for those students who are in crisis and really struggling. It's also about how we pay attention to warning signs, how we are in touch with all of our students and all of our staff to be checking in, and the little things that we try to do to alleviate some stress, to calm anxieties, to touch base, as Tracy's saying, just those little moments where we're human with each other, where we reveal vulnerabilities, where we can talk through situations. I think that is equally important, because if we can in any way intervene before we get to a situation where there is someone in crisis, that is a huge win for us as well. So sometimes it's about the little things. It's the everyday conversations that we have with staff, with students. It's the little changes that we can make to respond to where everyone is in the moment. I think we had so much talk at the start of the year about how this was going to be a normal year. I myself did a lot of it. And in many ways, we have returned to so much of the normalcy that we see in a day-to-day school life. And we continue to have all of the challenges of COVID and some of the aftermath of what we did in response to the early months of COVID. So I just echo the sentiment that it is an incredibly challenging year for everyone involved in the school community. And, we continue to come and to take steps forward and to do what we feel is in the best interest of students. And acknowledge that there's no way that we can do everything, but we can make small gains, and it is a community conversation, and that is really the most that we can do. How do we keep moving forward? So I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation. Ultimately, that's what I wanted to say.
One exciting thing is that today, to all the senior parents, and I'll send it to you guys, we have another wonderful podcast that's going to be blasted out by Randy Green, but it specifically talks about early decision and how we can support our seniors in the community. These people that are like, hey, Taffy, where'd Jenny get in? Hey, what's going on? Hey, Jenny, where'd you get in? Screaming in the hall, stopping people while there's no more market, going to parties where people are being grilled. It kind of talks about how you can respond, how we need to help take care of these kids, because that whole process is very stressful. And
Very.
so that's going out today. Randy already sent an email with a letter out, but I did a podcast with her. It's going to go out today to the, and it's just kind of another reminder to parents about how we can work through this. It's great, but when you make your public, putting all over Facebook, it's fine to say, yay, Huskies class of whatever. But when you go overboard, people see this, and it adds to, it's just too much sometimes.
Anxiety. We don't need the anxiety.
A lot of anxiety, because there are kids that will be disappointed, and it has nothing to do with them. And Randy talks about that in the podcast, how these decisions are made, why they're made. And I think it's very stressful these next 2 weeks at the high school with that. Someone innocently in a class wears a t-shirt. He's, hey, Dan, great, you're going to Brown. And Julie's sitting in the same class and she got rejected. That kind of stuff can't happen in today's climate. It's just too stressful.
Yep. Okay. Are you only contacting the parents to help them talk to their kids about that? Or is that also going through other channels to talk to the kids directly about mitigating their overzealous enthusiasm?
We had an advisory last Friday, and
Okay.
Randy met with the entire senior class, and that was
Okay.
the major topic.
Okay, I missed that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
Okay, thank you everyone for that update and good conversation. We want to, we have our last item, which it was follow up to our AP discussion. There were some questions about the AP and honors criteria, and I wanted to just give Lisa, some time here to provide a little overview or ask the board for just kind of further questions and flagging this, what the questions are, what the concerns are related to that. We had a good conversation about AP at the last board meeting, and this is always a good place in the curriculum committee if there's additional follow-up questions or concerns. So we welcome that. And Lisa, did you want to provide any context?
Sorry, I was trying to find the data. So there was a concern about open access, things like that. And I guess, the high school did a lot of work on that several years ago to make courses more available. And I think this is an example of if we need a deeper dive, this is something that we would push for next summer and going into the next year, because it's just, there's a lot on our plate. But I did want to just share with you some specific data about when you look at, the particular courses and who's taking these courses and is it evenly balanced and things like that. When you look at some of the courses and you think to yourself about the overall percentage of certain groups in the classes and what the ratios are and everything else like that, I do really think that we are in good shape. I literally went through and said, okay, let's see all of the students and what kind of schedules they're taking. And, if you look at things like students of two or more race, you look at Asian Pacific Islander, you look at Hispanic, you look at African American, you want to get a sense of, is there enough access? And, to be frank, the amount of access in some of these courses is similar to, the percentage of our white students taking them. We have to remember that when we look at this, for example, the Hispanic population in Western high school is 6%. Okay. The African American Black population in high school is 1%. The students that identify themselves as two races is 5%. So when you start looking at that, and then you look at in the courses, what are they taking in the courses? Now, wait a minute. I think I'm getting confused. That's wrong. The percentages I just gave you was what was represented in the AP courses. But when you look at, for example, if 20% of the students identify two races and 5% of them are in APs, that's pretty good considering that it's the 11th and 12th graders that take APs, if you understand what I'm saying. If you look at some of the most popular classes, like AP Psych, for example, you look at AP Psych, 11% of the overall population of white students take that course. So it's not like we don't see in my preliminary investigation any big discrepancy between certain groups that are just being locked out of these courses. We don't. If there are 9 African American students, Black students in Weston High School, and you have 2 of them in the AP program, what percent is that? So this was just kind of a rough thing, I thought, because I said, should we stop and look and make sure that are we providing, like, is the kids that are taking the course, is that kind of reflective of, number one, our population, number 2, their ability to take the course? Because clearly when you look at that courses with, BC Calc, AB Calc, across the board, you only have, a certain amount of kids that can even take those courses based on the track. So I would say that I think that the work that we're doing with waivers and putting in specific courses in the AP program, like psych, like human geography, like environmental, trying to get more students to take AP Lang, for example, in English, AP US history, to try to increase those areas where you don't necessarily have to have the math and science backgrounds. I mean, the first blush, what I looked at is that we are we're really in good shape. And when you look at the number of students that take, we're not talking about these students, whether they are students of color or white students taking one, we're looking at on the average, most people take 2 to 4 APs that are in this program. So I wanted to at least take a sort of a look at it, because I know it was mentioned of a concern to sort of do a dipstick on it. We can certainly look at it in more detail in the spring going into the summer. Julie, I don't know if you have anything to add about, how students can waive into these classes if they feel strongly about that, certain ones, for example.
Sure, yeah. We have a course placement request process. So for a student who has not been recommended to take a particular course, if that's a course they desire to take, they can talk about that with their school counselor when they meet individually. They have their individual scheduling meetings in the month of February. And the school counselor will be able to provide them with the form that they need to complete in order to request a course that has not been recommended. It's completed by the student and the parent, and then following the receipt of all of those forms, they are reviewed by a team of individuals. That includes administrators, it includes curriculum instructional leaders as well, to look at what's the readiness for the course, what is the data that we have, what is the current level of performance, what other information do we have to talk about success. And one of the factors that is considered is, has the student been able to challenge themselves in an AP course or an honors level course before? And if the answer is no, and there's any evidence to indicate that they could find success in doing so, we absolutely support that. We've done that quite a number of times with seniors who are requesting an AP course, and it's the first time that they have been able to do that. So that process is very much open to any student who would like to challenge themselves, and should be very easy for them to talk with their counselor about how they do that.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Thank you. I know I was the one that was asking the question about the equity of access, and I really wanted to just, make sure we were doing our due diligence to make sure that we were achieving those kinds of goals. So thank you, Lisa, for sharing that information. It's good.
Well, and I do think every now and then it's worth, like, you raised it, and I'm like, let me go and look. And just to sort of do a dipstick into, like, how is this playing out? And I think it's important.
Yeah, sounds good. And also, in terms of discussing the advanced placement process, the only other question I had was more of a philosophical one, and it can totally be tabled to the spring discussion when we get into course placement. But the amount of how much restriction there is when students or internal student-based hesitation to take advantage of the waiver process, even if that's a thing, just kind of making sure that when we have these processes in place that allow students to challenge a course that they weren't recommended for, are the students feeling capable of taking advantage of that? And is there any thought to potentially making it completely open access, and instead of saying a student can't take it, we guide them and maybe don't recommend, but at the end of the day, let it be the student call? But again, that's much more of a high level discussion that can take place when we relook at this later.
Sure. And I would say that one of our concerns, again, it goes back to stress. And I believe it also says on the form, if somebody pushes hard enough to get into a course, the teacher cannot be providing extra help every single day after school to keep the kid in the course. And that's actually addressed in the waiver, because sometimes that's what it takes. And the idea of balance in the schedule, and it gets to, the college and career counselor's point and everything else is we would never want someone to overload. And unfortunately, sometimes that happens. And then you're faced with, can I get out of it? How do I drop it? So it's sort of a fine line, I would say, into letting complete open. Our fortunate thing is we're 800 kids, basically. So we really know our kids and know the kids that are applying. Larger high schools don't have that advantage. When we sit down with our seniors or we look at, okay, who are the 93 kids that want AP Psych? That's a very manageable number to go through them and make decisions. And that's probably why it's at 93, because my guess is probably about 20 kids were probably let in that we felt senior year they wanted to try it, to let them do it. So it's the advantage, I think, of the district size.
And I can just share anecdotally, every year we have well over 100 course placement request forms that we review. So I think that speaks to your question about, hesitation to go through that process. I would just say anecdotally, I don't think that exists. But that's certainly something that we can talk with our counselors about.
Thank you.
Well, it's
Okay.
just after 10:30 now, and I think we've covered our agenda. Just a reminder, today is an early release day for the district for teacher professional development. And our next
Don't
meeting,
think I knew that. Like kids are coming home any minute now. I think I spaced that.
11:45, Taffy.
Oh, okay. All
Got a
right.
little time.
There goes the day.
so our next meeting is after the new year. I think it's listed on the agenda. June, you may know the date off the top of your head, but it's I think it's around the 8th of January. So
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's contributions today. And any other comments, questions for the group before we sign off?
Can we go over the approval of last
Of
minute
the minute.
minutes?
Thank you, June.
Yep. I've read them and they're fine with me. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please? You can make it up, anyone. I'll do it. Move to approve the minutes from the November curriculum meeting.
And second the motion.
Thank you, David. Okay, thanks, June. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you again. Bye.
Bye.